Hi there, I am Sarah Kolis. Welcome to the Dressing Up podcast, where we talk about all things bridal, dresses, and general dressing up topics. I love to encourage women to dress up while expressing their personal style with confidence on how to do so. Visit sarahkolis.com to book a bridal alterations fitting or even inquire about designing the custom couture bridal gown of your dreams. I'm so excited to talk to you about this next topic. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. So this is my first Ask Me Anything podcast episode. So I will be doing more of these in the future. So if you have any totally random questions for me, you can leave them in the comments or message me on Instagram or look out for those Instagram stories. So my first question here is, did you go to fashion school? How do you keep learning now? Love your account. Well, that is so sweet. Thank you. The answer is yes, I did go to fashion school. It was called Apparel and Textile Design, a BFA from Michigan State University, but I did learn how to sew all growing up. So I do have the degree, but I had learned prior how to actually sew. And that program was really cool because it was an avant-garde program. So it came out with some really interesting and unique pieces that I wouldn't have made otherwise. So it was just really fun, very artsy. I took a ton of fine art classes. So there's that. Okay, that was a two-part question. So how do you keep learning now? Okay, I am the type of person where I never want to stop learning. I am always looking for sewing learning opportunities, which are very far and few between. So I've done different classes and conferences and private tutors and lessons all across America. And I even went to England once to learn how to do tambour beating with Jan. And so, yeah, I'm always looking for different ways. Sewing expos are amazing. They have lots of really awesome classes, and it's kind of where all of us sewers gather in one place. Okay, wedding trends you love and hate. Okay, well, hate is a strong word, but things I'm not super keen on these days is, and you know, at the end of the day, weddings are all personal preference. You don't have to listen to me, but I'm not a huge fan of like a super ultra casual wedding. I think sometimes when we get so casual, we take out kind of the magic of the wedding. You know, a little bit of the stress and drama is kind of part of the whole experience. So I feel like when you get too casual, it starts to kind of lower the meaning of the whole day of getting married and promising forever to your partner. So, you know, casual is great, but I'm talking like the ultra casual where like, it's just like nothing matters. Let's just make the day happen kind of thing. But if that's your vibe, that's your vibe. Go for it. I support you. Another thing I'm not loving right now is stretchy dresses. I've noticed this kind of starting last year in 2022 wedding season. Stretchy dresses started to really come in. And I'm kind of talking like the ultra stretchy. There's been crepe dresses that have been in for years that have a little bit of stretch to them. But lately we've been getting into kind of the scuba knit. So I'm not a huge fan of that. But again, if that's your vibe, awesome. Go for it. And they look amazing. They, you know, provide a very tight look to your body. And if kind of the sexy vibe is what you're going for, then you're definitely going to get that with a stretchy dress. Just not my personal style. Again, hate is a strong word. So I don't necessarily hate those things. It's just some things I'm not super keen on right now. Some things I love with weddings. Uniqueness. Everyone is going for it. It seems like the past several years, the traditions are kind of thrown out the window and we're just kind of doing whatever we want. So I love that. Keep doing that. Another trend for 2023, and I think going into 2024 that I'm seeing is very colorful weddings. So last year was all about the neutrals, black and whites, and I'm seeing lots and lots of color coming through lately. So I love that trend. It's so fun. And we've been seeing a lot of unique colors too, not your standards. So I've been enjoying that a lot. Okay, next one. Who is your favorite sister? Okay, guess who that came from? One of my sisters. I have 3 of them, if you didn't know. Okay, skipping that. Okay, so Abby asks, I need to hear more about your engineering background / how you got into sewing and bridal. If you follow my Instagram account, I just recently posted that I went to the auto show, the charity preview event. It's where everyone gets all dressed up in fancy dresses, and there's also cars there. So I did mention in my Instagram recently that I was an engineer in the auto industry. I live in the Detroit area for 6.5 years. So I was a trim engineer, which means I made the patterns for car seats. Very different than what I'm doing now, but there is also a lot of similarities that cross over. So how I got into that was well, doing what I do now is kind of what I've always envisioned for my life, like starting like pre-kindergarten. I swear this is like what I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to work with fancy, pretty dresses. That was like my whole vibe growing up in sewing. So then when I graduated college with a fashion degree, I was kind of thinking like, oh, shoot. Okay. So to get a fashion job, I have to move to a big city like New York or Seattle or LA. And I was interested in staying in Michigan. And it wasn't until I graduated that I'm like, oh, okay, I should have thought of this more. So I was kind of trying to look for local jobs. And my brother-in-law, Ryan, was working at an automotive seating supplier. And he was telling me about his new job and about how they have sewing machines at the office. And I was like, well, what are you using those for? So I was very intrigued by that and set up an interview and came to learn that this would be a pattern making job. And I was just totally thrilled for that opportunity. So I did that for 6.5 years. I was at 2 years at my first company and 4.5 years at my second company. And I really, really, really enjoyed it. But of course, in the back of my mind, I always loved dresses so much more. Very different group of people, very different atmosphere. Automotive was very corporate, where, my business is all fun, young girls enjoying, the best days of their lives. So it was very different, but I do love both in different ways. But I just decided that doing my business full time was my true passion. Tough decision to make, but I am thankful for all the coworkers that I had over those years, and leaving was very bittersweet. I did learn a lot from that job, though, that I now transfer into my business, such as my pattern making software I use for my dresses now, which was really, I'm so thankful that I was able to learn that program because it's a very tricky one. So I'm thankful I had the experience to have others training me on that. Anyway, okay, that was a long answer. Let's go to the next one. I'm going to finish up with that. There was a 2-part. How you got into sewing and bridal. Okay. Well, this is like, I guess this whole question was like my whole life story. So I started sewing very, very young. I always say I could operate a sewing machine before I could write my own name. My aunt was into sewing, so I would watch her at the sewing machine and was just waiting for the day that she offered to teach me. So we started with the doll clothes and fun things like that. And I eventually knew I wanted to get onto clothing. So I made a lot of my clothes growing up. So that was fun. And then bridal specifically, I worked in alterations at David's Bridal during my summers of college. Lots of experience gained there. It was a lot of volume, a lot of brides, a lot of different kinds of dresses with a lot of different body types. So I got to learn so much at that job and loved it, loved it, loved it. I just knew working with brides was something I was going to want to do. And that working into bridal as a child, that was always something I wanted to do, but I knew that was only reserved for the best of the best seamstresses. So I worked really hard growing up with the hopes that someday I could do what I'm doing now. And my 6-year-old self would be very proud of me. Okay, so another, who is your favorite sister? My goodness, 2 of my 3 sisters submitted this question. They're dying to know. Okay. Custom alterations. I have a dress that I would love to add a slit. How do I find a tailor? Great question. So, she brings up a good point. Custom alterations versus standard alterations. There are differences. I am willing to do custom alterations. So you're going to get more things like I can do a custom sleeve, or I can add a corset back, or do custom things like that versus just lifting the shoulders, doing a hem, adding a bustle. Those are pretty standard items. So yes. But here's the other thing. Adding a slit to a dress can be very tricky. I get asked this a lot from my brides because it's been very trendy lately to have a slit in your dress, which is fabulous. But there needs to be a seam, and it can't necessarily be a ball gown style dress. So if you have what's called princess seams that aren't the side seams, but they're kind of in the front, not in the center, but like the side front of your dress, chances are you could probably add a slit. There's a lot of situational things that would have to align for that to truly happen. If you're talking about a bridesmaid dress, not typically something you can do. You can definitely probably add one at the side seam, which is the side of the dress, but you'll have to talk to your individual tailor or seamstress that you're working with to answer those types of questions. Sometimes it can be done, sometimes it can't. Some tailors and seamstresses just don't want to do it either because it is kind of a little bit of a risky thing to do that, you might not like it. So how to find a tailor to do that? Well, I always say contact your local dry cleaners. They probably have a list of tailors and seamstresses that they can refer out to you that will live in your area. And then you can go ahead and contact them either by phone number or email and ask them if they do that sort of thing, or just set up an appointment with them if they're willing for them to look at it in person. How to get into the world of altering. Sewist of 3 years, just bought my first surgery. Ooh, congrats. I guess, starting with just practicing on your own clothes, on your family's clothes. Sewist of 3 years, good job. You're already buying a serger. YouTube videos are amazing. Yeah, I would say watching the YouTube videos to kind of learn how, practicing, and then of course just like letting your friends and acquaintances know that you now have this new service. I'm sure everyone, it seems as though everyone has a stash in their closet of things that need fixed. So check that out. Yeah, see what you can do there. All right, I have one more that I want to get to today. This is Secreti. So she says, okay, I don't know how to make this into a question other than red flags, like things like in the wedding process or between couples that you view as a red flag. A stat I recently saw that couples who have a cake smashed in the face are most likely to end in divorce, as well as financial analysts who said the amount of spending on a wedding is negatively associated with happiness in a marriage. Example, those who spend less have a happier marriage, whereas the more extravagant weddings generally do not. Oh, that's very sad if that's true. Don't love that. But okay, I would say, I'm not sure about red flags other than, honestly, just like maturity, right? Weddings can be very, very emotional for lots and lots of different reasons. And I think it's always the most stressful the weeks leading up to the actual wedding date. So just remembering to stay calm and just keep your eye on the goal. I think brides and families and grooms tend to lose sight of what the goal is. And my advice is to just remember what that goal is and do the steps that it takes to get there, as opposed to kind of zigzagging around, and that can get really stressful and emotional. Okay. And then what I would also say, I don't know if I can really say red flags like that because I have no stats to base off of, but that would be my biggest one. Also, just a random thing that this makes me think of is to not bring your wedding rings on your honeymoon. I have heard so many times that women have lost their rings in the ocean on the beach. So I left mine at home. We did the Bahamas, and it was sad to leave it behind right after my wedding, but it's so worth it. It was safe and sound. Didn't have to worry about it. My husband wore his like plasticky type of ring. That's like the cheap, like Amazon, like just a placeholder type of ring. And he actually lost that in the ocean. So tidbit for you. All right. I think that's everything. So if you have any totally random questions for me, I am going to be doing this type of episode again in the future. So you can message me on Instagram or leave it in the comments and reviews of this podcast. Also, for those listening, thank you so much for your support. I would so love if you would just take a second to leave a review on this podcast and maybe leave a question in there for me to answer on one of these podcast episodes. So thank you so much for listening. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode has allowed you to approach the world with greater confidence in your own personal style. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out through email or the inquiry form on the website. I hope you are all ready to go and get dressed up. I look forward to sharing more dressing up tips with you in future episodes. Thanks so much.